Hello there everyone, video today is on the Conservative Party's tax announcements in their manifesto. UK general election coming up, not too far away. So what do the Tories say they will do from a tax perspective? Well, the first thing to say, of course, is that they will continue with the so-called freezing of all the thresholds, the personal allowances, the rate at which higher rate, additional rate kicks in for at least another 4 years. There's been a lot of commentary on that. So-called fiscal drag will bring a lot more people into paying tax to begin with, into higher rate who were basic rate. So no U-turn on changing that. That is still going to come in. What else have we got here? I mean, the headline that they've committed to, they said, look, no increases to the rates. So the rates of income tax, VAT, corporation tax, or capital gains tax. Interesting little bit of compare and contrast. The Labour Party have said the same for no changes to the rates of income tax, VAT, and corporation tax. They haven't said anything about capital gains tax. That's one of the things where people think that Labour, when they get in, if they get in, could be a shoe-in, who knows. Anyway, they will tinker with capital gains tax, but the Tories have said, no, we won't change those rates. But like I said, the big thing is that fiscal drag, which will continue because the actual point at which these rates kick in, even though they may not change, will be static. What else have the Tories said? National insurance, 2% of all employees' NI, getting it down to 6% by 2027. It was 12% not so long ago. And abolishing class 4 NIs for the self-employed, whilst still having an entitlement to state pension. They just won't pay any national insurance. Now, that's no great surprise. Jeremy Hunt in his last budget alluded to the fact it was a long-term goal of the Tories to actually get rid of national insurance, which to all intents and purposes is just another form of income tax. So NI cuts promised. Child benefit, lots of issues with child benefit before, typically based on the fact that it was on an... if there was 2 individuals in a household, let's say one of them was on 80 grand a year salary, the other was on 10,000 salary, combined 90, then they would get all of their child allowance withheld, and they have to pay it back rather. But if there was someone who was, let's say you had 2 couples, 2 individuals in a couple who were again earning 90,000, but it was split, say 45 each, there would be no clawback of child benefits. It was very unfair. So the government said, look, we're going to increase that. They did that in the last budget. Now what they're doing in the manifesto is say we're going to change it so that it's based on a household basis rather than looking at each individual. And the taper will start at a combined household income of 120,000 rising to 160,000. So changes afoot if they got back in on the child benefits. Pensioners. Typically a strong vote for the Tories, so they're going to look after the pensioners in the UK. Triple lock plus. So we've had the triple lock in for many years, which basically means that the state pension will go up with a higher of 3 things: 2.5% average wage earnings and inflation. And it's pensioners have had a good time of it fairly recently with regards to the state pension because of that high level of inflation. Now, what the Tories have announced in terms of what's going to change is this so-called triple lock plus. So what's the plus? Well, the plus is that they've said no pensioners will pay income tax on their state pension. So what does that mean? Well, basically, the state pension goes up and up all the time, particularly with regards to these triple locks and the increase every year. So that now it's it's over about £11,000 a year for the state pension. So, and we're saying that it's going to continue to go up by the triple lock if the Tories got in. And we've also covered the fact that we've got this fiscal drag where the thresholds aren't going up for paying tax. The point being that in a few years' time, the state pension could actually be 12.5 grand a year. Or just over, more than the point at which income tax kicks in. So the personal allowance is currently just over 12,500. So that means that pensioners, assuming they had no other income, just receipt of the state pension, they would all of a sudden pay tax. Now, people have been crunching the numbers and said, that's very unlikely, because even if the rate of the rate of the pension, state pension does go up, and then the unlocking of the personal allowances in about 3 or 4 years, you may find that pensioners might be paying tax on a few hundred quid, a couple of hundred quid come 2029, something like that. But nonetheless, so the government has said, look, we'll put in this triple lock plus to make sure that you don't. So how will they do it? That will mean the introduction of an age-related personal allowance. It's like everything in the tax world comes full circle. I've seen this before. For many years, you had a higher personal allowance. Basically, the older you were, then they got rid of that. They said, listen, every man, woman, and child, regardless of age, will have the same personal allowance. Now, we're going to have a two-tier, for want of a better phrase, where older UK residents who are in receipt of state pension possibly have a higher personal allowance to make sure that they're not paying any income tax on that state pension. So that's what the triple lock plus, that's what the plus bit means. What else have the Tories said in their manifesto? Abolish stamp duty land tax. So we talk about looking after the grey-haired brigade, coming back to the younger generation, first-time buyers. Abolishing stamp duty land tax for first-time buyers on properties up to 425,000. So there you go. They've had things in the past before, haven't they, for SDLT? Right to buy, this, that, and the other, temporary holidays, various things. And anyway, this one's going to be a permanent abolition of SDLT for first-time buyers, any properties up to 425. Now then, another one which caught my attention when I was just delving into the detail to do this video. I must admit, this absolutely escaped my attention when the manifesto was launched last week. Capital gains tax exemption. So, picture this. You're a landlord and you've got a buy-to-let property and you're looking at selling it, and the tenants who are in there say, you know what, Mr. Landlord, we want to buy this property off you. If you sell your buy-to-let property to your tenants who are currently in there, there is going to be, if the Tories get back in, a 2-year exemption from capital gains tax on that sale. And that's quite a big deal. So when I looked at this, it didn't say 2-year deferral, it said 2-year exemption. So that could save the landlords a lot in capital gains if they offloaded that property to their tenants. Now, I can see the policy behind this. It's all about the supply of the housing stock and to encourage people to get on the property ladder, and everything else comes part and parcel with that last point on the SDLT. So to buy your current rental property off the landlord to incentivize the landlord to sell it to you, no capital gains tax for 2 years. Like I said, saw the word exemption, not deferral. Exemption means you don't pay tax. So an interesting one there, particularly good if you are the landlord. Right, what else have we got? VAT. So Tories have already said that they will not increase the rate of VAT. They've recently increased the VAT registration threshold to 90,000. One of the things that they've announced in the manifesto, they will have a look at so-called smoothing off the cliff edge of the £90,000 VAT threshold. So in other words, as soon as you're over it, you got to pay the full rate of output VAT, add 20% onto your invoice. Now, for a lot of small businesses, it's a big deal, particularly if their customers cannot claim the VAT back themselves because they're individuals, they may not be in business of their own account. So that's a 20% hike that they'll have to add onto their sales, notwithstanding the fact that they could take the hit to their margin if they didn't think the customers would take that increase. So interesting that the government has looked at this smoothing off. I mean, it's always been the case forever since you've had VAT registrations that there is this cliff edge, and no one's ever mentioned smoothing it off before. So that's quite an interesting announcement that caught my attention. What else to tell you? Just finally coming back to the pensioners. One thing that the Tories have committed to is keeping the tax-free lump sum on when people take their pension. So crystallizing the benefits, which is the posh phrase for taking your pension. When you take it, a lot of schemes, you get the 25% tax-free lump sum, which is great on so many levels. And they have pledged in the manifesto to keep that 25% tax-free lump sum arrangement. So there you go. That's just an overview there of the Tory party's manifesto tax announcements for the July 2024 general election in the UK. If you like this video, please do subscribe. And as always, I'll see you soon.